On today's World Insight, the escalating aerial conflict between Israel and Iran has entered its second week, with both sides launching strikes. Will UN calls for restraint be heeded as foreign ministers from Europe meet with Iran's foreign minister in Geneva today?
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you live from Beijing. The aerial conflict between Israel and Iran has entered its second week on Friday with no signs of de-escalation. Since June the 13th, Israel has launched large-scale airstrikes across the multiple sites in Iran, targeting nuclear facilities and military infrastructure, causing significant casualties. In response, Iran has carried out several waves of missile and drone attacks on key locations inside Israel. The United Nations, on the other hand, has called on all parties to exercise maximum restraint, uphold international law, and return to negotiating table in good faith. So will the conflict spiral further, and what could it mean for the broader stability of the Middle East and beyond? Let's loop in our panelists for today. We have a very strong panel of four for discussions on the Israel-Iran conflict. Joining us in Singapore, James Dorsey, adjunct senior fellow at the Singapore's Rajaratnam School of International Studies. Meanwhile, in Doha, Sultan Barakat, a professor in public policy from the Qatar Foundation's Hamad Khalifa University, and in Xi'an, Wang Jin, director of the Center for International Strategic Study with Northwestern University of China. Last but not least, in Beijing, in the studio, Einar Tangen, senior fellow with the Taihe Institute and chairman of Asia Narratives. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. The latest news, the meeting between the foreign ministers from European countries and the Iranian foreign minister. According to IRNA, the official Iranian news agency, the Iranian foreign minister suggested very clearly there is no talk with Washington unless Israel stopped attacks. Now, Professor Barakat, how much possibility is there?
Well, clearly, Iran is looking for a way out. It's seeking a diplomatic solution. Otherwise, he would not have traveled to Geneva to speak to other Western leaders. However, it is reasonable to expect that they won't be able, or they won't be willing to negotiate directly with the United States for two reasons. The first one is that they were already in negotiations with the U.S. for the nuclear deal when Israel attacked.
Okay.
And the second now continues to attack. So it is reasonable, I think, for him to demand that any talks direct with the U.S. should be preceded with Israel stopping its attacks on Iran.
Okay, I can't hear you very clearly, but I try to figure out what you're trying to say. Go to you, Mr. Dorsey, also about that. How much do you see the discussion between the European foreign ministers and also the Iranian foreign minister would mean for the next stage of negotiations or further conflicts?
I don't think that, let me put it differently. Clearly, it made sense for the Iranians to meet with the Europeans. Keep in mind that two of the European states, Britain and France, are Security Council members. Iran faces a potential snapback of UN sanctions against Iran. So therefore, and Iran, of course, the Europeans were partners in the 2015 international agreement. I think the basic problem here is that the Iranians want an out, but at the same time, they have very poor options, which is one reason why they're insisting that there will be no restart of negotiations with the United States until the fighting, the attacks stop. The problem for the Iranians is that militarily, this is not a battle that they can win. And therefore, the regime, the government, is being confronted with a set of bad choices. It either fights and goes down fighting, or it, in one way or another, succumbs to the demands that the Americans and the Israelis are making.
Mr. Wang, we see this as not only a conflict of aerostrikes, but also apparently conflicts of narratives, propaganda, as well as the rippling effects of what is going on, how much different stakeholders will be able to shoulder until the end of it, if there is an end of it. Now, Professor Wang, tell me more about your thoughts on how much do you see this step, military pressure against Iran, meanwhile European foreign ministers talking to Iranian foreign ministers, while at the same time, we also see Washington trying to sort of, quote unquote, figure out within 2 weeks, if you believe what Washington says these days, to figure out whether Washington would directly involve in this military conflict. And also Russia, China, some of the other countries in the region are also trying to voice their different opinions as to what should be the end game. Mr. Wang.
Well, you are right, Tianwei. Actually, it is not only about the military conflict. And actually, behind this military conflicts is we're talking about different understandings, different definitions, and different narratives over what is happening and what should happen. Because when we're talking about the courses of the war or the course of the latest conflict between Israel and Iran, they were, of course, very apparently different understandings. From the perspective of Iran, they believe that, or from their definition, they believe that they are peaceful using the nuclear capabilities, and they do not have the ambition to develop the nuclear bomb. But from the perspective of Israel and their evaluations, they believe now Iran is very, very close to the nuclear bomb, and they have the ambition to develop the nuclear bomb. So that is why the military is inevitable. But then, so what is happening now is that there's two kinds of the definition, two kinds of the evaluation, two kinds of the understandings now conflicted with each other and lead to the very serious war between the two countries, Israel and Iran. So that's why, as you mentioned, United States and China and Russia and European countries all contributed from different perspectives to bring the two understandings closer to each other and try to end the war based upon the very new co-accepted definition. But let's be frank, I don't think it's a very easy task, because they still have the very strong division.
Compared to the year 2015, what we are seeing in the world today is a very different place compared to earlier days of JCPOA. It seems that stakeholders have more to think about in terms of where they themselves stand and what they mean to themselves, rather than just the Iranian nuclear issue. Having said that, though, let me ask you, Mr. Tangen, about what is going on right now. Now, what is the reasoning for Israel's aerial attacks against Iran? Is it about regime change? Is it about developing nuclear weapons from the Iranian side already? Or how far is it, according to the latest intelligence information made public to the rest of the world? Or is it about Israel going all its way as long as it can, with the United States standing by and say, go ahead, I wouldn't intervene, or some other things? What do you think is the ultimate reason why we are here today?
There are three agendas. Israel wants to destroy Iran. They've said that for many years. They've been saying Netanyahu has been saying for 33 years that Iran was only weeks away from a nuclear bomb. Well, that was 33 years ago. He's the original boy who cried wolf. Then you have the United States, which is backing them. The rest of the world wants this to end. There is some ambiguity in the Middle East because there are some entities there who they don't think it's a bad thing for Iran to be, have their wings shortened, but they do not want to see an Iran in turmoil. All right, that would mean refugees, huge instability, all sorts of things happening. So at this point, it's just Israel's and Netanyahu's desire to continue the chaos in order to continue his political reign.
Now, to you, Mr. Barakat, we have seen regime change since the 1950s by the United States. Of course, the U.S. president, as he said, is still weighing for 2 weeks, which interestingly might coincide with the deadline for the tariffs that was set earlier. So how do you see Washington's so-called lingering at this moment about its final decision, if it is a final decision?
Well, we know that the US president is reluctant to get involved in regime change because he was one of the critics of those who attempted regime change before in Iraq and in Syria. However, I don't think he has a free hand in this. I think the nature of the Israeli lobby within the United States, the influence Israel has on the deep state within the US, and the unique ability Netanyahu has to manipulate decision makers in the US may lead us into a situation where a decision is made for the president, and he has only just to put on a brave face to pretend that he knew all about it and he's part of this. Very similar to the fact when they attacked in the first place. The issue about regime change, the Israelis, if they were not pursuing it before, they have to pursue it now, because after this attack, if this regime survives, then it will be more determined to have a nuclear bomb, because now they understand the real threat Israel poses to them. And this is why I think Netanyahu is now keen on moving more and more towards that agenda. He would like ideally to create normalization with Iran under the grandson or the son of the Shah, the last Shah. And he would like to isolate Iran from the Palestinians, because this is all fundamentally about the Palestinians. Iran is being punished for its support of Hamas and the Palestinians in their resistance to Israel. He has managed successfully over the last few decades to normalize and or neutralize all Arab states supporting the Palestinians. The last state now standing is Iran. Okay. And you can see that this is part of his broader agenda. And we would not be surprised if he were to take this mess as the cover.
There are
final
so many
push towards displacing the Palestinians out of Gaza.
There are so many aspects of what is going on actually between Iran and Israel. What might be the rippling effect? We might not be able to have all the time to analyze everything in detail, but certainly a lot of things are very interesting and relevant. For example, Mr. Dorsey, the aerial attacks we are seeing today between Israel and Iran, by the way, it was Israel which started these aerial attacks at the very beginning. It's one that is rare compared to earlier time. That is apparently an aerial war, quote unquote, that started with the two parties so far away with one another, crossing over many other countries as well. And also, as we know, an aerial attack will not be able to change a country fundamentally, nor to destroy the nuclear facilities, particularly those in the underground bunkers. So, Mr. Dorsey, how do you see, just tactically speaking, where the military conflicts is heading for?
Well, I think you've got to keep in mind that Israel has superiority. Iran does not have an air force to mention. It does not have a navy to mention. There's no ground battle because there are no adjacent land borders. Israel has severely decimated Iran's air defenses. That's clear from its ability to.
I'm interested in what is next.
Now, having said that,
well, I'm interested in what is next, not just necessarily what happened. Please.
Right. Well, I think that one of the problems is, and that goes to the issue of regime change, is that the Israelis are going to run out of targets. Basically, they focused on the military, some non-military or non-nuclear thing, but they're going to run out of targets. The risk with regime change is not that you're going to get the Shah back, but that what many have long predicted, that you're going to get a shift in Iran from a clerical to a military regime, with the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps becoming much stronger, if not controlling government.
There are, once again, so many scenarios, Mr. Tangen, but the question really is, what is the reason for all of this to happen? If we talk about a regime change, why there should be a regime change? When it comes to international law and so-called international regulations. And also, meanwhile, what should be the reasons why the rest of the world can just witness a conflict between Israel and Iran ongoing? Many suggest it's about the nuclear weapons. But even when it comes to nuclear weapons, there are very conflict stance as to where Iran is in terms of developing nuclear weapons, even in Washington, the inner circle in the Beltway. So what exactly is the nature of all of this?
This is a desire for the United States to get revenge for what happened with the ouster of the Shah, the hostages that were taken by the U.S. There's longstanding enmity. We've had, basically all sorts of sanctions against them. They haven't worked. So this is a continuation of an old battle. In terms of Israel, they want a complete dominance. They have over 200 nuclear warheads. Weapons that they can deploy, and they have indicated that they would. So right now, it's just about supremacy. This is the law of the jungle, and this is unfortunately the way that the world is going. There are many leaders, including Donald Trump, who advocate this.
But it is still in the name of destroying the so-called nuclear weapons in the making in Iran. Mr. Wang, to you, we understand the very interesting debates going on in Washington about exactly where Iran is. And in my journalism career, I remember very clearly the year 2003 in which the former Secretary of State of the United States, Mr. Colin Powell, as respectful a person as he is, was wrongly being picked and present what he called a specific anthrax in front of the United Nations General Assembly, and calling on the rest of the world be aware of that because Iraq had it. But eventually, that was not the case. So, and the regime has been changed based on that, which was not true. So how shall we see the possibility of history being repeated now, especially even Washington has its own debate about where Iran is in terms of nuclear development, nuclear weapons development?
Yes, Henry, I also remember very clearly that the Powell was actually showed the so-called proofs in front of the United Nations Assembly member states. And then it's become a very so-called famous picture in history. And everybody remembered and then tried to define it as a very symbolic moment for United States intervention for seeking the fake proofs to cover United States' own the ambition, the United States' own intention for international politics. So that's why I think United States right now is quite different from what happened about 2 decades ago for its only its Middle Eastern strategic policy, because we know that at that time United States, under the so-called political ambition or so-called ambition to change the world, they hope to reconstruct and rebuild Iraq. But now, under the Donald Trump administration, I think the very principle of its Middle Eastern policy that the United States does not want to deeply involve into the regional affairs, does not want to spend money, does not want to.
That was the earlier rhetoric, but now there's a question about what it means America first, right? U.S. President said it himself that he said it first, and therefore he has the definition of what exactly it means, and the rest of the world should follow. So, Mr. Barakat, how do you see that debate going on in the United States, coupled with the internal fire that's going on in politics, for example, in California, and also President Trump's own use of executive power at this moment, the debates related to that? It seems a lot of things are happening all at the same time and woven together. One could be another's cause, another could be one's result.
Absolutely. I think if President Trump continues with this American first, the way he's unfolding the strategy, he will end up America alone. Not only America alone, but America with a hollowed federal state, which he already started to dismantle. And ironically, a lot of the savings that he's made by cutting federal jobs within the United States has actually now given to Israel to supply this large round of war. Which is obviously not sustainable. The real issue is not what America is able to do. The real issue is what the rest of the world is going to do. China and Russia in particular? Are they going to continue to sit on the fence and monitor as if nothing has happened, or are they going to take action? Of course, it is more or less in the interest of both countries to see the United States drag itself into another regional folly. And this is, I think, would be ideal from a Russian perspective, maybe from a Chinese perspective also, because it will take the US off their own issues. They will be busy elsewhere, as they have been in the last few decades. However, there is now a possibility to come up with a new politics. And the global South is fed up with the domination of the North. And now they're looking for China and Russia to take the lead in preventing a global chaos. And this war in particular has the real possibility of spiraling into a major chaos here, and will affect China eventually because of the energy. As you know, Iran is one of the main suppliers of energy to China. In fact, almost exclusively, it only sells to China under the sanctions. And it is in China's interest to take a position that at least stops the deterioration of the situation, if not
it is in the interest, one could argue, for everybody
justice.
To speak out at this moment to stop what is going on right now. At least the
I agree, but there are only five.
Between the two sides that are actually particularly killing civilians on both sides. Chinese President Xi Jinping, as you said earlier, talked to Russian President Vladimir Putin in a phone call to exchange views on the escalating conflict between Israel and Iran. Take a look at what they said during the call. Chinese President emphasized that achieving a ceasefire is an urgent priority, stressing that the use of force is not the right path to resolving international disputes. Meanwhile, he underscored the need to protect civilian lives amid the rising tensions and reiterated that dialogue and negotiation remain the fundamental solution. Meanwhile, the Chinese side also called on the international community to actively work toward de-escalation. Now, that is a quote coming from the latest news release coming from China as a result of that phone call. Mr. Tangen, let me ask you about this as well. It's not just China or China's conversation with Russia. The stakeholders in the Middle East also have a very different thought, particularly after October the 7th, Israel's strike against Gaza, and how the reactions have been in that region, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, you name it. So Turkey, as well as some of the others. So how do you see this region is changing, particularly even Saudi Arabia and Iran earlier seemed to have a relatively better relations than they used to be, at least not antagonists against each other anymore.
Well, that was thanks to China brokering the deal. But the fact is, there's a certain ambivalence. They do not want Iran, as I said before, to deteriorate, to become a refugee state, to actually be broken. On the other hand, they're not unhappy that a lot of Iran's satellites, Hezbollah, etc., the Houthis, are in fact being weakened because of the attack on Iran. But this is a very, very different point. Now, emotionally, the people feel very strongly that what is happening right now is that Israel has dehumanized all Arabs and Muslims, and that they're expendable. They can be bombed into existence, that women and children can be killed, and it doesn't matter. So there is the emotional, and then there's the political side of these things.
Mr. Dorothy, your thoughts on this?
I mean, basically, I think I agree with you that there is a universal interest in getting this conflict ended. It's a threat to countries across the globe. The problem with this is that Israel does not listen to anyone. If it listens to anyone, it may be the United States. And so far, the United States has backed it. And so, with other words, there's a lot of that, including the meeting today in Geneva between the Europeans and the Iranians. At the end of the day, it doesn't shift the pendulum.
Right.
The decision on that lies in Washington, whether one likes it or not.
Right. We see a lot of discussions about tactics, about the spatial air war between the two sides. We also saw a lot of discussions about the strategies as to how to do it. But even the most important question is not being discussed enough. That is, what is the end game? What do we want? Now, if it is denuclearization, JCPOA earlier had an agreement, and it was during the earlier Trump administration that the United States backed out. And now we are seeing another round with more military pressure against Iran, at least for the moment. Will that lead to more discussion and negotiation? And meanwhile, not only Iran, Mr. Wang, I would like to ask you, but other countries that are on the verge of developing more nuclear power, particularly nuclear weapons, when they watch this, what is likely to go through their minds? And they would just surrender, or they would probably think, let's develop these things as fast as possible so that we are not going to be threatened. It is a very interesting picture. Different sides could argue different things, but things are still happening, and we also see nuclear weapons are being spreading around the world. Iran, by the way, Israel is a nuclear weapon power. Go to you, Mr. Wang.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. Because on the one hand, let's be frank, there were still some problems in the existing so-called nuclear monitoring system internationally. Because from the perspective of Israel, they could argue that, okay, we don't trust the IAEA, we don't trust the JCPOA. Now Iran's not enough monitored. More monitor system should be imposed to Iran to limit its nuclear capability. And on the other hand, from Iran's perspective, okay, Israel has nuclear bomb. Why not do something towards Israel, but just focusing on me? So that's why this is something problem that happens still existing over the existing, international nuclear monitoring system. And on the other hand, as you mentioned, when really some problem and a conflicting idea erupted, if any states, no matter based what kind of excuse, if any states maintain that they have the legal rights to start a war or start the attacks against the other states based on their own understanding, their own ideas, it would be dangerous for everybody. Nobody would be safe in this existing international community.
Final words from Mr. Tengen.
Okay, this is a violation of international law. It sets a precedent where it's the law of the jungle. Right now, Donald Trump, there's a taco effect in operating. Trump always chickens out because they're not concerned. He always delays his decisions. Right now, his base is rapidly split. A lot of them believe that he was supposed to control prices and get America out of foreign wars, not get them into it.
Wow. A lot to happen, a lot to be discussed. Certainly another time for the rest of the world to understand exactly what's going on. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on X and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for being with us.